All right, joining us now in the studio, Nationals leader David Littleproud. Thanks for your time. Question time with a difference there, beginning with that condolence motion. Cliche that someone's respected across the aisle, but Joel really was. Plenty of people knew his son, and he stepped away from politics. He was keen to spend more time with his kids. Unimaginable is always the word, isn't it? What is he going through right now?
Look, it is. And Joel's been my sparring partner when he was in this place for 4 or 5 years, and I came to respect him, not just because of his intellect, but because of the human being that he was. He was genuine, he was fair, he believed in the values and principles and of his party and himself and what he was brought up to believe. And when he hurts, we all hurt, and that was pretty hard. Monday was pretty hard too, I've got to say. To see one of your mates hurting in such traumatic circumstances, it rips the guts out of everybody. We're just there for him and his family. They're a beautiful family, but Joel has the respect of everybody in this place. And I think even some of his factional fighters would even say that he's one of the true believers, and for that you've got to honour and respect him, and to his family, we just want to wrap our arms around him.
And that's what happened figuratively and literally as well. It was nice to see. The big political news of the day was unemployment. Got to be pretty impressed. Is this the soft economic landing that people doubted Labor could achieve?
Well, it's always good when people get a job, but you don't understand why they're getting a job. Is because they're doing it tough. This government has taken, since they've been in office, $153 a week out of their pockets, and the best they're going to put back into it is $15 in July. People are doing it tough, and they have to go back to work to pay this cost of living crisis that's been created right here, in this place here in Canberra, through the economic management and the policies that they've led, whether that be around energy, whether that be around what we're seeing, particularly in food prices. Inflation's sticky, and this is really about the story of Australians doing it tough out there and having to make real decisions to get back to work.
And do you think this means it's less likely we'll see rate cuts this year?
Well, I'm no economist, and I think it's always dangerous to...
You work for a bank, though?
Yeah, always at
Good point.
At the grassroots, mate, always sitting around the kitchen table. I was never smart enough to get into head office. But let me I think it's dangerous to make those predictions. But obviously, if we're seeing unemployment where it is at the moment, it's going to be harder for the Reserve Bank to make that decision to reduce interest rates. And when you look at what's happening with migration, you look at the pressures that's coming in this economy, you're looking at real pressures coming on families. I think you even saw in question time today, the Treasurer actually putting out there that he's floating that this is going to get harder and that unemployment, in fact, will go up. Here in his answer, he was trying to soften Australians up that this may not, we're going to take our win.
It's taking a while though, isn't it?
Well, it is, but I think that's because of the pressures that are out there at the moment. People are under real pressure. They're making real decisions.
But it still means there's a job out there for them to go and get. You kind of imply that people were sitting there idly for years and they're like, we do need another job, let's go grab one.
Well, they're forced to go back because they're making real decisions at the supermarket. That's how granular this cost of living crisis has got. I've spoken to families that are sitting there in the fresh food aisle, putting fresh produce back on the shelf because they simply can't afford it. And they're making decisions that instead of staying at home with the kids, they're going back to work because the mortgage is high, electricity is high, and they can't afford the food bills. That's the reality of what a government should understand is actually happening out there. And if you're in touch with them, you'd understand that Australians are doing it tough and you can pull the levers without flooding the economy with more money, but have common sense solutions to many of the problems that is driving inflation and keeping inflation higher.
Back on migration, part of the factor driving that number out today is international students. Do you think if you got into government, would you like to cap the number? Should there be a limit on how many we let in?
Well, we're going to look at this through the lens after the next budget, and Dan Teen's putting that together. Now, the government continues to articulate that we wanted all these numbers, and that was before COVID. You've got to understand, before COVID, we did stop much of the migration, not only in terms of students, but permanent migration, because there was a health pandemic, and we had to make those tough decisions. Now, straight after that, there needed to be a recalibration, but this government has let it get out of control.
You'll put a figure on it heading into the next election of how many we should let in.
And we'll work through every level of that, whether that be students, but also about making sure what we are saying to the rest of the world, we're giving those people around the world, the greatest gift anyone in the world can get is a pathway to citizenship in this country. So why wouldn't we pick the best and brightest that we need, and particularly make sure it's the skills base that we need? When this government has even said that, well, we're not interested in bringing in tradies, when we've got a housing crisis, but yeah, they're pouring in millions of people into this country and we've got nowhere to house them, but we haven't got the tradies to build the actual homes to do it. Where's the common sense in that?
Well, can I ask about nuclear energy? The suggestion is you're going to name 5 or 6 sites. Is that risky, going that specific, rather than just going with a policy to lift the moratorium?
No, you've got to be honest with the Australian people. We're going to have an energy debate about not one that's on a concentrated level of putting all our energy eggs in one basket of renewable energy, 82% by 2030 and then beyond. That's dangerous because you're also going to add 28,000 kilometres of new transmission lines. Look what happened in Victoria just before Christmas. You increase the vulnerability of our grid. So why wouldn't we? We've got sovereignty of all our resources, spread our risk and our grid across sources of renewables, of coal and gas, with carbon capture storage, and with nuclear.
Isn't the problem with nuclear, though, that you can't, it's not like a peaking source, like, say, gas peaking plants, where nuclear, it takes a week to turn it on and you've got to leave it on.
That's not necessarily correct. The technology with its emerging through nuclear is actually demonstrating that it actually can peak better than coal, and that's why we're saying we're existing coal,
but not ready to go like that.
But so too is hydrogen. So too is much of what's happening with renewable energy. And we're not against renewable energy. We're just saying what's happening at the moment is you're asking regional Australia to bear the brunt of this reckless race to 82% renewables. But we're also tearing up the very thing we're trying to protect, the natural environment. And we're taking away our food security by taking away prime agricultural land. And we're putting up 28,000 kilometres new transmission lines. Now, there's a mix with renewables. There needs to be a mix and a sensible conversation about why wouldn't we look at nuclear energy when most other countries around the world are embracing this.
Do you accept that this is risky, though? If they mount a fear campaign, you could lose the election on this.
Well, you've got to stand for something. And when we're seeing this country going down a pathway of having an energy policy that is concentrated around renewables without spreading the risk. Now, I'm not an educated man, but in grade 8, they taught me about concentration risk. And that's about making sure that you don't put all your eggs in one basket. And that's what we're doing with this renewables policy that we've got. It exposes Australia, it exposes our sovereign risk, all for an ideology. When
what
we can
about the
reduce
viability?
emissions.
So Queensland, for example, if they're going to be in Queensland, does state Labor agree? Does David Crisafulli agree? Aren't they?
He says he doesn't.
Against this? So how?
And David Crisafulli didn't agree with my position on the voice. He didn't agree with my position on the treaty.
But can you have?
He could be premier.
But we're going to have the courage. Can I just say, well, hold on. We will have the courage of our conviction to say to the Australian people, there is a better way to do energy policy in this country. And if the Australian people vote for us, then that's a fair indication to premiers that they should get out of the way and let the adults in the room get on with the job.
So that's your message to David Crisafulli?
Well, I've been convicted on this for some time. The Nationals led this debate many, many years ago. I'm not afraid of the courage of my conviction to go forward and go to the Australian people about how we could have an energy mix that isn't concentrated.
But it's fair to say he'd have to change his mind if he's Premier of the day.
Well, we'll be able to convince him by the Australian people backing the energy policy that we take the next election. That's what Peter Dutton and I, what you see is what you'll get out of us. We are not going to hide anything. We're going to be upfront.